Hey, what's up? Welcome to The Mandatory, a live evening show. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also, follow us on our social media channels. We're at The Mandatory TKO on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. That's where we'll be posting all of our stuff if you missed anything. But remember, if you're also going to be listening to this on the audio side, if you want to support us on the audio side, you can find us wherever you do find your audio. And if you got a couple of minutes, leave a rate and review if you can. Give us a 5-star. But Bryan, this one coming up, it's Canelo week, Canelo Charlo week, two undisputed champions. And we're going to do the full breakdown preview here that we usually do at the mandatory. But this is a blockbuster fight with two guys. And at one point, people were saying Canelo was ducking a Charlo brother. Now he's getting into a ring with a Charlo brother, and lots to talk about. But before we get into the whole breakdown, your thoughts on this bout?
I'm glad that it's finally here, and I'm hoping that it's not our last super fight of the year because this has been actually, in terms of boxing super fights, pretty good one. We've had a few. We've had Ryan Garcia versus Tank Davis. We had Crawford
Yeah.
Spence. I thought this was a super fight. Teofimo Lopez and Josh Taylor was a great one. Devin Haney versus Vasily Lomachenko was kind of a spectacle, and it was trending all night and things of that nature, right? Like that was one of those big bouts where boxing sort of like won the evening. And I'm probably leaving out another one. I want to say, Naoya Inoue
Yeah.
on like a Tuesday morning, knocking out Stephen Fulton, and that was a big deal. But like, there's been a lot of these type of fights, and this is going to be another one. Anytime Canelo steps into the ring, it's a big night. But he's doing it against Jermell Charlo, who has sneaky been around for a while. I think a lot of people may like think about this and realize it like, yeah, he's been a champion and champion level fighter since 2016. Now, Canelo has been here longer, but Jermell Charlo's been around as well. They're actually the same age, 33 years old. And to me, this is a fascinating fight for a number of things. You have technically two undisputed champions fighting each other, although there will be a title stripped at
Yeah,
the time
Mel,
of the
Mel,
opening
Mel,
bell.
Mel has to give up one of his titles, so technically it's not. But you know how
Boxing.
it is. Yeah.
Boxing. Now the WBO has super champions, so great. Now I got to explain to my casual fan friends, like, hey, so here's how this is gonna work, and it's all this bullshit. This is why people fucking don't care. But whatever. So Jermell Charlo, Canelo Alvarez is a great fight. I can't wait for it. And yeah, undisputed versus undisputed. Jermell Charlo moving up 2 weight classes and off a 16-month layoff fighting Canelo Alvarez. Two guys in the pound for pound top 10 in my opinion as well.
Yeah, I think this is a sneaky good fight, especially for anyone that's really been doubting Canelo. When you take a look at the storylines, Canelo didn't have the best outing in his last fight. A lot of people are talking about, does he still have it? Is that age going to get him? Because he's been fighting professionally since he was, what, like 15 years old? Something like that. And Canelo Alvarez, at this point in his career, if he beats Charlo, we're going to get into that in just a second. I'm still going to go off about this a little bit. If he beats
Yeah.
Charlo, a lot of people are going to give him props. If he doesn't, we're going to be talking about the fact that, is he getting old and has he lost it? And I think that's definitely going to be one of the questions coming into this one. And then you got a Charlo brother, a lot of hype on him, doesn't fight a lot, the activity. But before we get into everything, we also want to say here at the Mandatory, we want to get your thoughts. So the chat is open. If you have any thoughts, any questions, make sure to drop them. And most importantly, we will be getting to all of your comments in just a moment. Why don't we get to a couple of them,
Yeah.
Bryan, before we get into everything?
Yeah, let's do that. Jesus, IMPK are active in the chat. Anybody else watching, please feel free. We will get to you throughout the duration of the show. Before we begin this first segment of the 3-part preview, first up, we have Jesus, who says a lot of things. One is Charlo by split decision. And he said the arrival, this is interesting. The arrival looked lackluster, no buzz in Vegas. I'm not in Vegas. I'm in New York. Shantelle is on the West Coast, but not in Vegas. And I didn't feel like this has gained a ton of buzz on social the way some of these other bouts did, the way even the press conference did. Now it's early in the week, so let's see what happens by the time we get to final press conference, media workouts, and things of that nature as the week progresses. But I don't feel like there's been a ton of buzz yet, but I do think it will come because it just comes with Canelo Alvarez fights, and then Jermell Charlo is not, he's not one of these guys like that's not going to bring any buzz with him either. He's not, no disrespect,
Yeah.
Rocky Fielding fighting Canelo Alvarez.
I mean, you know what's crazy? I feel like Tank and Ryan got more hype than this fight, and it's two undisputed champions. And I don't know if it's because we've already been going through so many years. Canelo's been the face of boxing for how long now? That when we're getting into this fight, and this is a fight that, going back to Jesus, expiration date passed due to this fight. This was 10 years in the making. It's true. Like we were calling.
Not 10, but I hear
I
you.
mean, like it's been a minute. Like it's been a minute. We've
Because
been saying
Charlo
like
wasn't
Canelo should
even a
fight him.
champion 10 years ago. But yeah, I understand. I understand the sentiment.
But yeah, people still wanted him to fight somebody, right? Worthy. So I think I'm with Jesus on this. Like it's been a minute, a little bit of an over exaggeration, but that's what boxing fans, that's what we like to do.
Yeah.
So you know what? Let's get right into it, because I think this is the biggest question going into it. What happens and what is next for Canelo Bryan if he beats Jermell Charlo?
Jermall Charlo, perhaps next. You know what I mean? Let's remember, originally we thought, we as in everybody, because the report initially was that Canelo Alvarez was going to fight Jermall Charlo, and I was like, okay, that makes some sense. But Jermall, we haven't seen him in 2 years, but he's a middleweight champion, and moving up in weight, he seemed like somebody who's going to be a super middleweight at some point. And then it was Jermell, and it was like, whoa, wait a second. So he's going to come off inactivity, less so than his brother, but inactivity nonetheless, and jump up 2 weight classes. Are you sure about this, Jermell? Whatever. But, I mean, if you look at them in the press conference, I mean, Jermell is going to have, at least from a height and reach standpoint, a size advantage. He's 6 feet tall. Canelo Alvarez is 5'8". Canelo Alvarez is a 70 and a half inch reach. Jermell Charlo, 73-inch reach. We'll see how he handles the weight difference. But look, I think if Canelo wins this fight, then, there's going to be a lot of possibilities there. He's still probably the biggest star in the sport on a global scale. And I hope that the Dimitri Bivol rematch is not something we're going to see. We haven't seen Bivol in a while. Hopefully he gets a fight soon. Would like to see him again. But I think Canelo Alvarez, if he wins this fight, then, pound for pound, he's going to stay in the top 5. He'll go up, wherever you have him now, whether it's 4, 5, 6, 3, he's going to go up from that, beating another pound for pound guy. Jermell Charlo is going to fall off from that, and we'll see what happens in his new weight. I don't think, I don't know about you, Shantelle, but I'm not really buying the Canelo Alvarez, Terrence Crawford sort of super fight. I think Terrence Crawford's crazy enough to do it, but that's one of these things that seems a little too far-fetched for me. But I just think that Canelo Alvarez, maybe he fights Jermall, maybe he fights David Benavidez, which is what I really want to see next year. And I just think it's going to be another big fight next May for Canelo Alvarez if he wins this fight.
Yeah, it's one of those things where Canelo signed a 3-fight deal with PBC. So, he's going to fight Mel, then he's going to fight Jermall, and, probably David Benavidez. Like, let's be real here. I think that's kind of the path for Canelo. And to keep it real with you, if he ends up beating all 3 of those guys, like his legacy, he could just retire off into the sunset and be like, peace out. And Canelo would go down as one of the greatest boxers of all time, Mexican boxers of all time as well. And he's in great company there, of course, when you think about all the great Mexican boxers. But I think this is such an important fight for Canelo because his last outing, so many questions, he wasn't happy with it. And I think if he gets a stoppage against Jermell, that's massive, right? Because he's an undisputed champion coming into this one. Then when we talk about the pound for pound list and you look at how many fights Canelo has, of course, Bud is number 1, Inoue number 2. You can switch them if you want, but he would have to be top 3 then. Like if you're going to take out an undisputed champion, who are you going to have at number 3? Like, are you having Usyk there? Are you having Tyson Fury there? Like who's fighting Francis Ngannou? Like it's so hard to keep Canelo off that list because for so long, he's been the face of boxing. He still is. Like the numbers that he gets, people buy his pay-per-views, people still care. Canelo is a guy that brings in even casual viewers. So he's still that dude. And if he beats Jermell Charlo, I mean, his legacy just gets even better than it was. And everyone, stops saying, well, he's ducking this guy. Because that's also been the knock against Canelo, right? Some people think he's been a little bit choosy with his opponents. But I think this would be absolutely massive for Canelo because it would stop a little bit of the haters and the doubters. I think some people would shut up
Maybe.
If he beat Jermell, I think people would have to shut up a little bit.
I don't think they would, because they'll just say, "Oh, Jermell was 2 weight classes smaller and coming off a 16-month layoff." I think that's what it's going to be. I also think, if we want to pivot to real quickly the Jermell Charlo piece of if he loses, I do think that he can win in a loss if he has a great performance, especially coming off the layoff, especially against Canelo Alvarez and hanging with them and winning, let's say 3-4 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that if he's going to sort of come out looking better despite losing, I think he has the ability to do that, one. But two, I think he has to push Canelo a little bit. And it'll be interesting because typically guys off a 16-month layoff or off a layoff in general, you don't expect them to get off to fast starts. Canelo Alvarez is not always the fastest starter, though. Like, there have been fights where he's given up some rounds in the beginning and then sort of pick guys apart later on.
He also fades later in the rounds.
And that's the other thing, too. It's like, is Jermell Charlo going to start off slow because of the long layoff and then sort of find his footing as the fight goes and end strong? John Ryder ended the fight strong against Canelo Alvarez and won a couple of rounds, according to 2 judges and myself. I gave John Ryder 2 rounds in that fight, both of them late.
Yeah, and I mean, his eye was messed up. Like, Canelo did damage, but everyone was like, we were looking for the stoppage because it's John Ryder, but he stuck it in. I think if Jermell loses, but he has like a really good outing in the ring, like say, he wins a few rounds, maybe even hurts Canelo because he's a power puncher, right? Yeah. Like, listen, he's got a nasty right hand, and I think his left hook is better than his right hand. And so that's when we get into the betting portion, which, by the way, we are going to get into the betting portion. We're going to break down the fight even more. But I think if Jermell fights really well against Canelo, say if it's closer than people think, would you want a rematch for this fight? Because who knows when Maul's going to fight?
Yes. Would that be in Canelo's best interest to do that? If he escapes with the win and it's close, I don't know. Monetarily, it could be.
I don't think Canelo would do the rematch if it was really close. I don't think he would. But I think if it was, I think fans would want it. 100% we would want it. But you know what? Let's get into the next portion. What if Jermell Charlo beats Canelo Alvarez? Is this possible, Brian? Do you see this happening?
I won't give away my pick, and we will get to a couple of more comments before the betting portion of this, so in a few more minutes. So keep them coming because I see that the chat is actually active. So we're gonna get to some. If Jermell Charlo wins this fight, then unfortunately, I think the conversation is going to pivot to, hey, is Canelo Alvarez finished? Yeah. I just think that's going to be it. 18 years of pro, turned pro at 15 in 2005. Jermell Charlo turned pro at 17 in 2007. Quietly, and just hasn't been as active as Canelo Alvarez. Very few people have as you like to point out, Shantelle. But I think Jermell Charlo, if he wins this fight, you're talking about, never mind the pound for pound, like, top 10 list. Like, he's going to creep up somewhere into that. If not top 5.
Top 5. He would creep into top 5 if he beat
probably
Canelo.
Will. Yeah. But if not, then he's going to at least challenge for that. And it would be like, I think it'll be a bigger upset than we'd be making it out to be, especially considering that, again, Canelo's been active. Jermell hasn't. Jermell's coming up 2 weight classes. Jermell's 16-month layoff. Jermell is the quote-unquote smaller man because he's coming up from 2 weight classes. We'll see how the size difference plays out. But if he does this, though, it's an upset of the year candidate, even though the sports books will reflect that that's, statistically not the case, but it should be up for consideration as to me, that would be a bigger upset than Dimitri Bivol and Canelo Alvarez by far, because you could look back with hindsight and be like, hey, Canelo was too small for light heavyweights, right? But Jermell Charlo will be coming up 2 weight classes and actually beating Canelo Alvarez. That would be totally different. Now, do I see it happening? I don't know about that. But if it could, Jermell Charlo's good enough to pull it off is what I'll say.
I think Jermell Charlo can give Canelo problems 100%. I think he can beat Canelo Alvarez. Will he? We're going to get into that in the betting portion. Stay tuned. Drop your comments. And you know what? It does look like Jesus is a Canelo hater just off the comments. I'm saying, Jesus, we love you, Jesus, because, you steady support us. Jesus, come on. Like, this is a ridiculous statement. I have to go to this. I'm sorry. What are you talking about, Jesus? That's one of the most ridiculous statements I have seen. He's not a top 10 Mexican box. Stop it. Like, just stop it. Okay. Like, I know a lot of people are going to be like, Juan Manuel Marquez, and I get it. Okay, but Canelo's up there.
He's in the
Like
top
Canelo's one of the
10. Like, come on.
easy. Like he's
He's
easily
easily,
in the
yeah.
top 10. Because and that's another thing. Talking about Jermell Charlo. Sorry guys, I had to go to that comment. Jesus, thank you for dropping a gem.
We're gonna get some more in a few. We're
gonna get to your comments for sure, guys. For Jermell Charlo, I think if he wins, automatically skyrockets in the top 5 for pound for pound list.
Yeah.
You would have to. You beat Canelo Alvarez. Also, I think there's a lot of Jermell Charlo haters. There's a lot of Charlo haters, period. Both the brothers. You know? And hey sis, I'm just saying, like, I'm laughing right now because Hasey's like, Shantelle, you stop it. I'm not gonna stop it yet, okay? But back to Charlo. Jesus is just giving me a hard time right now. It's okay. It's all love. We appreciate the comments, you guys, by the way. Keep them coming. I do think it automatically places him in the top 5. And I do also think that then Jermell Charlo really becomes like, let's be serious here. He becomes someone that people probably want to watch. Right? Because
the fight, the next fight is already right there for him, though.
Exactly.
It's Terrence Crawford.
But that's the fight everyone's talking about. So think about Jermell Charlo. If he was able to get it done against Canelo, and then he goes and fights the rumored fight that everyone's been talking about with him and Bud, like his star is only going to grow. So I think it's only good stuff for a guy like Jermell Charlo, who isn't the most active. But I think this is not even arguably, this is his biggest fight of his career. Right. So here's the thing, though. I think it's actually a win-win for Jermell if he fights good. Like if he fights,
it doesn't get blown away.
Yeah. If he doesn't get knocked out or something like that, or there's a stoppage, I think it's a win for Jermell. Like if he fights good in this fight, and everyone's like, oh, Mel really like fought well against Canelo, then people are still going to give him props. And then we'd still want to see him in a Bud fight. Like, let's be serious. He still gets that fight. So I think it's only a win-win for a guy like Jermell Charlo. Any final thoughts? Should we get to some comments before we move into the betting section, Brian?
Let's definitely do that because the comments are there and we definitely want to see what you guys are saying. But I would add to it, like, yeah, as long as Jermell Charlo is competitive, the Terrence Crawford super fight, like people will want to see it. If he gets blown out of the water and it's an early knockout, which I do not foresee at all, but if it's an early Rocky Fielding type of knockout, I'm gonna stop picking on Rocky Fielding, I promise. But if it's that kind of a knockout, then yeah, people are not going to want to see Terrence Crawford versus Jermell Charlo. But if he's just competitive, makes it the distance, wins a few rounds, maybe stuns Canelo a few times, and yeah, people will be like, huh, he did that against the best super middleweight in the world. What could he do against the best welterweight in the world? And in his own weight class at 154, presumably that it would happen at that weight.
Yeah, let's get to Hustle Man, a friend of the show. Hustle Man, thanks for rocking with us tonight, as you always do. Canelo has to win to remind the world he's still one of the top dogs. Agreed. Charlo, win or lose, his stock is still high because of the belt he holds at 154. I'm pulling for Canelo by split decision. That could be sneaky good when we get into the betting portion, Hustle Man. We're going to let you know what a split decision would be for the odds. I agree with you 100%. I think this fight, if he gets a dub and he does it really nicely, and like say that, he beats Charlo in a great fashion, right? Like say he just dominates, puts on a masterclass performance. People are going to be talking about Canelo again being that guy. Let's get to Robin B31. Yeah, this weekend's fight is an exciting one, but at some point a champ got to fight contenders in this weight class. Boxers are getting robbed years of their careers. What do you think, Brian? What do you think about Robin's comments?
You know what I think, Robin? I think dudes just got to fight. I'm tired of dudes just fighting once in a year. And I think this is something that a lot of older boxers, former boxers who are now retired have been talking about. Lou DiBella's talked about this on our show. Other people have talked about this. Like, guys have to fight. And one of the things that's hurting the sport, and I think the sport's had a strong year. One of the things that's hurting the sport is you even have prospects fighting once, twice in a year. And we can't be having that. Like, you got guys, especially in their prime, fight at least twice in a year. I don't think they need to fight like 4 or 5 times or whatever. Like this is 1982 or something like that, or even before that. But like the once a year thing, I just don't know how that's sustainable for the sport in a lot of different ways. So I just think guys got to be active, period.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's get to some more comments. This one probably might be the best one because it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Devin Haney scared of Shakur Stevenson. H Money Mob. You know what? There's so you never know who's telling the truth in boxing. Like you never
Never,
know with
never.
all the stories that are coming out.
Why we don't do a ton of interviews?
I mean, I saw Frank Martin talk about why the Shakur fight didn't happen, and he wanted a little bit of extra money because they were saying that Shakur was offered like 8 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And Frank Martin was saying that Shakur said he was going to make 3, and Frank Martin was going to make 1 mil, and he was like, "No, I want a little bit more." Because listen, I think everyone knows that Shakur is coming in that division, and we know how good Shakur is, but until Shakur fight someone more worthy, I'd say. I think Devin's still that dude.
Though I do think Edwin De Los Santos is legit. I think
It's super legit, yeah.
in terms of Shakur Stevenson opponents, this is one of the very best ones. I would have rather seen Shakur versus Frank Martin, but honestly, I kind of think Frank Martin lost his last fight.
He
So I
did.
think so. I have no problem seeing him fight Edwin De Los Santos, who can punch, is on a hot streak, is willing to fight. I think that's going to be a fun fight, and I'm very excited about Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis, even though Regis Prograis
Yes.
underperformed against Danielito Zorrilla, my fellow Puerto Rican. But I thought even though Regis almost lost that fight, I do think it's one that he'll bounce back from performance-wise. But Devin Haney is going to be a tough matchup for him. And I
Yeah.
wonder how, on the flip side, how Devin Haney is going to handle that power. So
And
we
then
got to.
that's the biggest power puncher he's ever faced. A lot more power than Loma, and Regis is skilled as well. I can't wait to break that one down. Joseph, just saying who he goes for. I hope Jermell wins and Canelo has annoying fans. So
Honestly,
him and Jesus, I see what's going on here. All right, I see what's going on with you guys.
Joseph, I'm going to be honest with you. I think every boxer at this level has annoying fans.
This one's facts, though. This one's facts. And when we get into the betting portion, this is true. The judges already have Canelo winning 4 bouts. I love that comment because it's true. Like, it's hard to beat Canelo in Vegas. So when we get into the betting portion, remember that because I feel like Triple G was robbed
Listen,
in that first fight.
as a Miguel Cotto fan, I think Joseph is on to something. That's all I'm gonna say.
Hey, no, this is true. I mean, look at his fight against Lara as well. Right?
Floyd
Question.
Mayweather, the CJ Ross infamous 114.
That's ridiculous. Osman 3001. Anything is possible since July 29th. Combat sports has just been one upset after another. I would agree with you. Anything can happen in this fight, and I think Jermell has a really good chance.
Dog, we didn't even talk about Israel Adesanya's upset loss, but oh my goodness, I'm so glad I only bet $5 on that fight.
I'm still shocked about that, to be honest.
To Sean, he lost the classic trap fight. It was literally like Mike Tyson losing to Buster Douglas before fighting Evander Holyfield because the bigger fight was on the horizon and he lost.
I am PK13, Brian. Which fighter will benefit more from the politics of boxing in this fight?
Oh. Now this is a fantastic question. I am PK13, one of our regulars, and I think it's hard not to say Canelo Alvarez, right? For being honest. I think you can call it both ways because with Jermell Charlo, there's a money fight on the horizon, right? With Terrence Crawford, that if you want to get into like your third eye shit, right? The conspiracy theory portion of this, you can kind of be like, well, you do want to sort of keep this at least close so that Terrence Crawford matchup could sell, whatever. But if you're Canelo Alvarez, like you already know, like that's Canelo Alvarez. And I think I don't know. I'm a little worried about how the judging in this fight could be, and I just hope that it's scored well and proper. Yeah. I don't care if it's close. I don't care if it's whatever. Like, if the fight is a close fight, I hope it's scored close. And if the fight is a wipeout, I hope it's scored as such, especially considering what I'm planning on betting later.
Yes. And by the way, Joseph just said Devin Haney, Regis Prograis prediction. You're gonna have to wait for that. Fight is in December, Joseph. All right. No, I'm just playing.
I do want to think. I want to think about that a little bit more though, because I
already know who I'm picking. I already know who I'm picking. Should I tell? No, you know what? I'm not gonna. You know what, Joseph? You gotta wait for the preview. All right, you gotta wait for the preview. I know who I'm picking already, and I mean the odds look pretty good for that one. Nerd, who's also a friend of the show, Charlo not going back down to 154. This is interesting because Charlo has power, and like we've seen it, I think his power is going to transcend as he goes up. So this fight going to be at 168. I think his power is going to be there at 168. That's just what I think. I think his power is going to still transcend as he moves up in weight.
At 33 years old, it is to Nerd's point. You're gonna come back down 2 weight classes after fighting at 168 at 33 years old after a pro career that has spanned 16 years and counting. It's gonna be tough. He says he's gonna do it, or he at least said in the past. I don't know if he's changed his mind since publicly or whatever the case may be. But he's, the Terrence Crawford fight, with Jermell Charlo, hopefully would happen next. But I don't know. I like. Here's the thing. No one knows what the fuck is going on in this sport. Like, truthfully, nobody knows. What I hope happens though is this fight is competitive so that we can get Terrence Crawford versus Jermell Charlo at 154. But will Charlo want to come back down to that weight? We'll see. We'll see how he feels after the fight.
This is a good one from Luis, who's also a friend of the show. By the way, I keep on saying, like, how do you pronounce your name? Is it Luis or Luis? I would say Luis because it's spelled like that.
Yeah.
But Jermell skated by with the draw in that first fight against Castano. He should have lost that one. Such a controversial fight. Could have gone either way. But the thing about it, though, Luis, is Mel came back in that next fight and ended up getting the knockout in the 10th round. So it's like, listen, questionable, but he came back and did his business in that second fight. So I kind of can't hate.
I kind of had Castano winning that first fight also.
No, I think a lot of people did. I think a lot of people did, right?
And I also thought that, and he, Jermell Charlo protested this and also avenged the Tony Harrison loss. But I thought Tony Harrison beat him in that first fight as well. I was at that one. That was the one at Barclays. I believe it was at that. And it was a little surprising, but I thought Tony Harrison, I mean, that's the best win of his career. And he paid for it in the rematch.
Let's get over to Van Damme. I seen a lot.
And then we'll get into betting. We'll get into our predictions.
I've seen a lot of people saying Canelo is on his decline, which might be true, but I honestly believe his power is going to wear down Charlo and stop him late. Okay, so you're rolling Van Damme rolling with Canelo's power, and of course, Canelo does have power as well. He doesn't have vicious power, but he's going to break you down round by round, and that's exactly what I think he's trying to say here.
Chat, could we actually get some of your predictions? I want to see some of your predictions as we're about to do our predictions. See who's gonna roll with who. We may think the same thing as we've had periodically on the show. So drop your predictions in the chat. We're gonna get to that next segment as well. Van Damme, I could see that actually. I don't know if I agree, but I could see that because Canelo, at the end of the day, is fighting a dude that's coming up from 154. So you would think that his power is going to translate better. As opposed to him fighting somebody at 168.
Yeah, and you know what? This weekend, the one best thing about this fight is there's so many different bets that you can make, and we want to make sure that our money is going to be green.
Like money, motherfucker? Money be green. Money feel like money. That shit look green to you?
All right, so for all of our betting fans, listen, this is going to be a great fight to bet on. Canelo Alvarez straight up on the money line, minus 430. And then you got Jermell Charlo as the underdog. No surprise, but a plus 300. He's an undisputed champion. I know he's moving up 2 weight classes, but Brian, is this line disrespectful to a guy like Jermell Charlo?
I think the line is kind of perfect. The reason why is because, and I think it's a little disrespectful to Jermell Charlo. But the reason why I think the line is perfect is because there's just enough there for me to look at it and be like, Jermell Charlo plus 300, and then really think about trying to bet him as the underdog. Whereas if this was Canelo Alvarez minus 280, Jermell Charlo plus 210, I'd be like, nah, like I'll just throw Canelo money line on a parlay or something along those lines, like a 3-legger parlay with like Iowa football under and your Las Vegas Raiders. And we'll see what happens. Like
I still don't call them the Las Vegas Raiders, but it's just tough for me.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that I just did that either. But it's just fine. But like I ultimately think that the line is fair I think if this wasn't Jermell Charlo coming off a layoff, maybe we'd see something different. But he is, and he's coming up 2 weight classes. And honestly, this is actually a better line than I think a lot of guys would get coming up 2 weight classes fighting Canelo Alvarez off a 16-month layoff. And that's respect to Jermell Charlo, who, again, undisputed champion at 154. So I don't think the line is totally unfair.
I think it's a little bit disrespectful. I mean, he's an undisputed champ. I think it's also because a lot of people leave Mel off the pound for pound list. It's crazy. He's an undisputed champ, but there will be people that leave him off and that don't believe in him. So I think this is the same type of disrespect as well. I would see, maybe Jermell Charlo being like a minus like 250. 200, like I'd be okay with that, but plus 300 at the same time, like if I'm betting on this and I'm rolling with a guy like Mel, I love this line.
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm gonna just place my money straight up on the money line. You know what I mean? So how are you going to be betting this fight?
Yeah. So I'm going to be betting on Canelo Alvarez to win this fight. I really try to talk myself into the upset, and if you do, please say so in the chat. Because I think there are some people, I've talked to some people who think that they're making a lot of what they saw against Dimitri Bivol and then John Ryder, and then it's like, is Canelo Alvarez slipping? Because it's not just that he's 33, it's also how long he's sort of been near at the top of boxing, been in title fights, more than 20 of them since 2011. Jermell Charlo's been in 9, of which he has 6 knockouts in. Not TKO stoppages, knockouts, like just flatlining dudes. Charles Hatley, Erickson Lubin, etc. But I bet on Canelo Alvarez to win this fight by unanimous decision at plus 125, because I do think that Canelo Alvarez is going to get some of the early rounds, and I question how close Jermell Charlo could ultimately make it in the eyes of the judges, right? I just think that while, look, I could be talking about 115, 113, 116, 112. I think it might be like more 117, 111 and things of that nature. But I do think Jermell Charlo gets a few rounds, has some moments, looks good in some spots, but I think the layoff is going to catch up. And maybe he gets some late rounds after Canelo's long settled in, because Canelo sort of fades and fights a little bit. Or at least did against John Ryder. Maybe that's where Jermell Charlo gets some rounds, but I think it'll be similar to, to some other Canelo performances where he mounts sort of a big lead and then fades late. Faded against John Ryder, faded against an old Triple G. Obviously faded against Dimitri Bivol because he didn't win many rounds in that fight. But I think it'll trend that way, and I ultimately do think it's going to be a unanimous decision, though. I think Canelo Alvarez is going to get enough rounds. I think he's going to really hurt Jermell Charlo to the body. I think the length and the reach is not something that's going to be foreign to Canelo Alvarez, and he's going to have that Canelo Alvarez power. I just don't think he's going to finish Jermell Charlo either, though. I think Jermell Charlo is going to be able to withstand it. So plus 125, I bet that on DraftKings. Unanimous decision, Canelo Alvarez. A decision straight up was minus 110. I was looking at that, but I was like, let me take a little bit more juice for the UD. So
yeah, when I take a look at this fight, Canelo Alvarez coming into this fight, so many questions because of that John Ryder match. Listen, did you see John Ryder's face after that fight? The boy was tore up. He is just very, very tough, and gotta give props to a guy like John Ryder. But Canelo was also coming off of a layoff because he had surgery on his wrist, so it was his first fight coming off that surgery, of course. So you have to take that into account. Is he getting old? He's 33 years old. He's been fighting since he was 15 years old. Like, the amount of fights that this guy has, the amount of miles that he has on his body is ridiculous. Then you look at a guy like Jermell Charlo, who hasn't fought for a minute, right? And that layoff is the only thing that worries me. And so when I was taking a look at this fight from the beginning, like if you go back to our videos, I was like, I think Jermell has a chance in this fight. And he does. Because like I mentioned earlier, his right hand, he's going to be landing that the whole entire night. That is usually his go-to, his straight right. Pretty good jab, but I think he has a double, triple jab if he's going to want to beat Canelo on the cards. I don't really see that happening, though. I think there's only one way that Jermell wins this fight. I think he has to knock him out.
Ugh.
And that's the thing. I think
tough.
I think he has to knock him out, and I just don't see that happening, especially coming off a layoff. And I don't think it's a tough thing, though, because I think if Jermell Charlo throws like the double, triple jabs, and keeps his distance, kind of like Bivol did, right? Because that's also the blueprint to be a guy like Canelo. Like, keep your distance, get in and out. You got to stick and move. You got to stick and move. But the thing about Canelo is, you know, he's going to come forward. Mel doesn't like fighting on the inside. He doesn't like fighting on the inside. So if Canelo is obviously going to get to the body, that's his thing. He's going to be able to land the jab. He's going to be the one stalking Mel, because Mel's going to be trying to keep the distance the whole entire time. But I think Canelo's going to be able to close the gap. He's going to be able to land those body shots. But I think Mel is going to be able to land the right hand a couple of times. Yeah. And his right hand is powerful, but his left hook is nasty. People don't talk about that man's left hook enough. They always talk about the right hand. Some people say Jermell only has a right hand. That's a lie. Like, if you think Jermell Charlo only has a right hand, you're not watching him box close enough. He has a nasty left hook as well. I think Jermell has a chance. So if you want to sprinkle, I'm just saying, if you wanted to sprinkle on this belt, right? Because there definitely is a chance that a guy like Jermell could get the KO TKO. It's a plus 950. I'm not betting that way. I was looking on FanDuel. I'm going by unanimous decision as well, because on FanDuel, it was a minus 120 for Canelo to win by decision. Maybe the lines have changed because I looked last night. But right now, it's a plus 115 for Canelo Alvarez to win by unanimous decision. So where did you get your odds from? Because you said
DraftKings plus 125.
Okay. Go to DraftKings then, y'all. because the odds are better there. Because I think it's so hard, and we've seen it before. It was on one of the comments. I'll have to go back. But I do think that Canelo lost that first fight against Triple G. I think Triple G was robbed there. I thought if anything was a draw, it was that second fight. And then obviously Canelo did work in that third fight and didn't even look like Triple G. But it's so hard to win against Canelo Alvarez in Vegas. Like that. And that's why I'm saying Mel's not going to get this decision, right? He's not going to outbox Canelo unless he pulls like a Bivol and throws like the double, triple jabs, moves around, sticks and moves, and makes Canelo like gas out near the end, because
not really his style though. Not really.
It's not right, but he has the opportunity to land a big punch on Canelo. Like, there's a chance that happens. The only other thing though with that layoff, let's go back to the Bryan Castano fight. Yo, Mel got hit a lot. Like, let's call it spade a spade. He got hit a lot in both of the fights. And
against Tony Harrison, particularly the first time. There was another fight. I want to say it was the John Jackson fight. There was a fight early on in Mel's title fighting days at super welterweight where he was getting hit a lot, and there were a couple different times where he was behind on the cards and got a knockout, or I felt like he should have been behind on the cards, got a knockout. So that's another reason why I picked unanimous decision. Like, Mel's gonna give up rounds, and Canelo's gonna have to deal with an onslaught as Mel goes for broke late. But you talk about Jermell Charlo's straight right hand. Canelo Alvarez is able to avoid that and get that left hook to the body, because I think that's the punch he's gonna be looking for, because that body is gonna be open when Jermell Charlo is going to open up, and if Canelo Alvarez is close enough, he's going to look to land that left hook to the body. I think that's going to be his money punch. He likes to double it up on the left side, body head, or head body in either direction. So I think that's what Canelo Alvarez is going to be looking to land for much of this fight.
And that's another reason why I took a look at this other bet, if you wanted to sprinkle, because I do think the layoff is an issue for Jermell. We saw what happened to Josh Taylor. Like, we see what a layoff does. And when you're fighting one of the best boxers in the world, yes, I said one of the best boxers for all the haters. All right, in the chat, you know who you are. Okay.
There's some smoke going on in the chat. Yo, be cool, guys.
I love it though. I love it though. Keep it coming, guys. You guys are the best. I think another interesting bet would be for Canelo Alvarez to win in rounds 7 through 12. Plus 450, because I do think there's a possibility, if he is breaking down Jermell like that he could get a stoppage in the later rounds. I think that's definitely a possibility for a guy like Canelo.
Yeah, and it's funny because like there are certain dudes in boxing. I didn't think Terrence Crawford would stop Errol Spence, and definitely not the way he did. So I don't think Jermell Charlo is somebody who's going to get stopped, but coming off a layoff against Canelo Alvarez, moving up 2 weight classes, if there's a spot that you want to take this bet, to Chantelle's point, I have no problem with that at all. And it's something that I would potentially look at. I may live bet, like it may be something where like I'll look for something in the early rounds and then try to get it late, but it's probably better value if you do it now than, after the opening bell.
Yeah. Let's go over to Luis, who says Mel is no beevil. It's true, but he is the undisputed champ, and he is athletic. He does have like the size advantage. I just want to see if Canelo's going to be able to close that gap against him. I think he will. But I still think Mel has a chance to land a big one. Like, I don't think Canelo's going to get stunned like that, but man, you never know. Let's go over to Hustle Man real quick.
Well, I wanted to answer IMPK's question because he
Go
says
for it.
why not bet the over, and that's because the over under is like 10.5 rounds and it's like minus 300. So I mean, if you want to put that in a parlay, God bless. But you know, if you're gonna get value on a minus 300 bet, you better throw a lot of money on it, and that's not something I'm probably comfortable doing if the over under is 10.5 rounds, unless we're talking about, you know, maybe a Paulie Malignaggi fight or something along those lines. No disrespect.
Yeah.
Look, some other bets that I wanted to highlight real quick, right? Because there are a lot of, this is one of those fights where there's going to be all those specials and they're going to try to get people to bet on some of these, and some of these are actually interesting. Do you think there's going to be a knockdown in this fight?
What are the odds for a knockdown? Because I do think there might be a knockdown. Yes, you know what? I would bet the knockdown.
Jermell Charlo to be knocked down in any of rounds 1 through 6 plus 650 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so here's the thing. It's like Canelo doesn't always start off quick, but then he fades. So it's like those mid rounds, you know what I mean?
Coming off the layoff, slow start, would Jermell Charlo get caught? Is, I think, the question that's asking. Plus 650 is enough for me to like look at it and be like, all right, if I put $2 or if I put $3 even, that could be like a little, you know,
Lunch
but
money.
I don't, yeah, in freaking, you know, not in New York. But and Van Damme agrees with you. Agree with Shantelle. 7 through 12. Look at it. Canelo Alvarez to get that late stoppage. I mean, he did it to Caleb Plant.
Yeah, and this is Van Damme's point. This is what Van Damme was saying. I see it playing out similar to Caleb Plant, Jermell getting caught late. And remember, Caleb Plant had some really good moments in that fight against Canelo, where we were like, whoa, like he's fighting really well against Canelo, giving him some problems. And listen, you know, it came to a stoppage later in the rounds. And that was also a fight where I think people, after that fight, people like really gave Caleb Plant his props, right? So something similar could happen to a guy like Mel.
And then Caleb Plant slapped his brother, and now I want to see Caleb Plant versus Jermell Charlo.
Let's see it. I would love to see that fight. 2+
knockdowns in this fight plus 700. That's not enough for me. I don't think that's enough for me. Unless you think somebody's going to dominate this fight, but I'm probably not doing that one.
But actually, before we get to Ace 317, we love new friends to the show. Just a quick hi, Freddie. Thanks for joining us. Thanks
Freddie
for rocking
Blanco.
with us.
Thank you.
Let's get over to Ace 317. If Canelo can close the distance the way he was against Plant, I think he KOs Charlo because of all the openings there are in Charlo's defense. And Canelo has some of the best defense in the pocket. Yeah, I agree. Like, if he's able to close that gap, Charlo gets hit a lot. Like, come on, man. It's possible.
That's one thing about Canelo that I really, really appreciate. It's just how much better his defense has gotten throughout his career. To the point where, I mean, you see some of the stuff he was doing against like Danny Jacobs, for example, and just made him look silly, neutralizing his jab just with his head movement and really setting up some of these body shots that we've been talking about. I could see y'all are gonna make me bet this Canelo 7 through 12.
Yo, and if you want to go by knockout, it's a plus 750.
Knockout straight up, not TKO.
Yeah, just a knockout. Okay. It's a plus 750, which is interesting if people are thinking about betting that way. Interesting. We're gonna get to some comments, some more comments before we get up and out of here. Drop your final comments, guys. Plant buckle Jermell with that slap.
Thank you, nerd, for that comment. He did. I mean, listen, I don't want to get too deep into it, but I mean, I'm actually, now that we've brought this back up, I'm actually disappointed that nothing else has happened since then. But you know, typical boxing. Caleb Plant should fight Jermell Charlo. I'm dead serious.
I mean, he was on whose podcast the other day? Wallow and Gilly's podcast.
Oh, really?
Caleb Plant was on Wallow and Gilly's podcast, and he was talking about the slap, and he was talking about how there was a whole bunch of like, what did he say? There was a bunch of Texas dudes. He was still going to slap someone. That's what he said. He didn't care. He's like, he was saying something like he would fight like all those Texas dudes or something like that. But it was pretty funny.
He one of them Chris Mullen white boys. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like
He is, yo, he is.
Like-
And you can tell by like how wavy he is too. Hustle
yeah.
man. Charlo is a bigger puncher than Plant, so I think Canelo would play it safe instead of walking down Charlo. I do think Canelo's gonna feel him out. Like I think Canelo will give him respect in the ring because I'm so curious, guys. I'm telling you, I'm curious to see how his power transcends.
Me too.
Because I think it's gonna be. I think it is like, and I think we're gonna see him stun Canelo at least once in this fight.
This is a good question from Ace, actually, that I want to get to. Ace317 holding it down in the comments. Who do you guys favor between Jermell and Caleb Plant?
I pick Maul. I'm sorry.
You
go with Caleb Plant? I'm rocking with Maul.
2-year layoff, so I we'll see. I probably would. I might lean Caleb Plant. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. I think Jermell is the better Charlo, but he also hasn't fought in 2 years. So like. I want to see him fight somebody, Adames, somebody.
I gotta rock with. Yeah, I'm rocking with Maul. I think Maul's the better all-around fighter. The layoff though would be interesting, but I think that's like a sneaky good fight for boxing fans. Like I think we want that fight.
Yes. Yeah, I actually think Showtime would push to make it a pay-per-view. They did it for Benavidez. And Benavidez is, by the way, like to end it here, we'll probably take 1 or 2 more questions. Canelo Alvarez wins. Benavidez is the guy that I want him to fight next. I wanted him to fight Benavidez here. And I said after Benavidez beat Caleb Plant and after Canelo Alvarez beat John Ryder, I might take David Benavidez to win that fight. But I'll see how Canelo Alvarez conducts himself this coming weekend against Jermell Charlo before I plant my flag on that.
All right, so Nerd said Canelo walked down Kovalev. Why wouldn't he walk down Jermell? Another thing about that,
Jermell.
Yeah, I mean he might fight Jermell later on, anyways. He'll walk down both of them. Let's be serious. He's gonna walk down both of them, but especially for a guy like Mel because Mel doesn't want to fight on the inside. Like he doesn't box on the inside. He's not comfortable with it. So Mel's gonna want this fight at a distance, and Canelo is gonna close the gap at some point because that's what he does. So it's one of those last things. Should we take one more?
Yeah.
Before we get it,
who wants to send us off with a bang here, huh? Who wants to send us off with a bang? Somebody in the comments earlier was talking about, man, y'all talk about pay-per-view buys. We're gonna, I'm not gonna say what he said, but it was hilarious. I hope that people go back and look at the chat replay to figure that out. But let's see what we have here in the comments. Who's gonna send us off? Y'all scared now? There's a bunch of comments here, but I'm looking for like the one. But to reiterate though, unanimous decision. We're both going with Canelo Alvarez. There have been plenty of times where we both lean the same way and we're right. And there have been other times where that wasn't the case.
Just like last weekend. Oh my god.
Last week I was 1-1-1 on my bets last week.
I mean, we both said Zhang was gonna win, but Joyce, the way he got knocked out. Sheesh. Let's never talk about him again on the show. I told you we're not allowed to talk about him again. If he has that type of performance. I just want to say, guys, we are doing a post-fight show. So if you guys want to rock with us after the show for Canelo Alvarez and Jermell Charlo, we'll be here right after the final bell and like the last interviews. We're gonna be. Do we have a funny one? Do we have a funny?
There we go, Robin. That's what I'm looking for. Canelo versus Ngannou is what we all want to see next.
Could you imagine?
Listen. I saw Francis Ngannou. There was a video that surfaced him working with Mike Tyson because Mike Tyson is training him for this Tyson Fury fight, and Tyson Fury is gonna destroy that dude. Tyson Fury is just gonna destroy that dude. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna do a post-fight show Saturday. We both pick Alvarez. Yeah. Astrid watched the Joe Joyce knockout, saying he got rocked. Joe Joyce was planted. It's so bad. And I was tight. She knows it. I was tight because it was earlier than I expected. I was like, God damn.
That was hella early. I don't think
I was like,
anybody
round 3. Joe Joyce actually looked pretty good in round 1. And then Zhang figured it out round 2, and then round 3 he caught it. I was like, oh,
overrated. He's overrated. But once again, make sure to join us after the Canelo Charlo fight. We'll be here rocking with you on Saturday night. And thank you so much. If you already hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you. If you haven't, please do follow us on our social media channels at TheMandatory TKO. And Bryan,
Also,
any final thoughts before we get up out of here?
yes, I also have content on the Action Network. Go check that out. Talking about the fight. And also some of the undercard fights. Your Dennis Ugas, Mario Barrios,
Great
Jesus
card.
Ramos, Erickson Lubin. This card is legit. And Elijah Garcia versus Resendez, who beat Jared Hurd earlier this year. This is a good card. I just don't like that Frank Sanchez fighting a journeyman heavyweight, but it's a good card nonetheless. So talking about that in a video on Action Network and in an article where there's like more of an in-depth breakdown of the fights. So yeah, go check that out as well.